Have RB Leipzig slashed the price for Benjamin Sesko? And now's probably as good a time as any to borrow the phrase of the game is gone. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooder live with me, Harry Symeou. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, how are we doing? Happy Saturday. Good morning to you all. Apologies once again, I'm not at home. I'm not in familiar surroundings. So you'll have to make do with the sound quality, the visuals, etc., etc. Once again, I'm at the original Casa de Symeou. I don't have a setup here, although maybe I should get one. Maybe that's the way forward. I don't know. Anyway, beg your pardon for the sneeze. I hope I got to the mute button in time there. Look, we've got a fair bit to get into on today's pod. We're going to talk Benjamin Sesko. What's the latest on the RB Leipzig striker? We're also going to talk about why the game is well and truly gone, as well as bringing you the latest on Mosquera as well, a player that Arsenal are said to be in talks over. And we're hoping to bring him to the club from Valencia before the window closes, hopefully as soon as possible. Let's say a few good mornings. There's plenty of you in the live chat with us. We've got James D, who says, let's see if we can get him up to 500 likes. That'd be pretty amazing. Thank you, James. Good morning to Junior. We've got Errol in the chat. Daniel says on Sesko, his agent does too much talking. We should stay away. I don't know if that's true. And the reason I say this, right, is because the other night, I posted something on Instagram, I think it was a few days. Well, I posted it a few days ago. I posted a video, didn't I, where I was talking about, and it was a clip from this podcast where I'd said, look, if it's true that Benjamin Sesko and his people are demanding a release clause be put in and they're demanding this ridiculous salary, then we should just steer clear. And we shouldn't entertain that. Not even for a second. That's what I put out. On, not last night, the night before, so on Thursday night, I got a follow from an Instagram account which belongs to the agency that is representing Benjamin Sesko. So I thought, oh, okay, interesting. And the guy's name, the agent's name is Elvis Basanovic. So anyway, there's me looking at this and thinking, that's odd. Why have I been followed by Pro Transfer Agency, Elvis Basanovic, the representatives of Benjamin Sesko? And then I thought they're probably pissed off, or maybe pissed off's a strong word. They probably don't care for what I have to say, but maybe they come across that clip because it went pretty big. For me, my Instagram account is not particularly big, but to get a video that went up to 112,000 views on Instagram for me is a big deal. So there's a good chance that maybe they came across it, maybe they saw it, maybe they searched the name Sesko and it came up. Anyway, so I get this message, I get this follow. So I decided to be cheeky and try my luck. And I sent Mr. Basanovic a message asking if he would be willing to speak to a reporter who covers Arsenal across multiple outlets. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you say he talks too much. Actually, he talked very little. To be fair, I got a very polite message back. Hi, Harry, thanks for the message, etc., etc. But at this moment, we're unable to comment on anything regarding Sesko. I hope you understand, smiley face. So that says to me that there is legs in this, that this could still potentially happen, that this could develop. And obviously he doesn't want to jeopardize that. So the idea that he talks too much, it might be the case behind the scenes and in the negotiations, and ultimately that might be a problem. But I can't sit and say that he talks too much because I tried to get him to talk and he was having none of it. Maybe he's speaking to much more reputable and bigger people in the football space than me, in which case your point is valid. But I can't say that because I tried desperately. I pulled out the charm offensive. I don't think I've ever sent a more polite, well-worded message than that in my life. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Craig says, good morning, Harry. With Leipzig blinking in this game of chicken, Sesko is surely incoming with money saved in other areas. Do you see one or two more attacking options, e.g. a left winger and a right winger, or a central attacking midfielder? I still think that Arsenal are only going to bring in the 2 attackers. I know David Ornstein has apparently said that Arsenal are looking for 3. I still think we're only going to bring in 2. And I'm okay with that as long as we spend the right money and bring in top quality players. Just on this thing, though, and this is obviously what we're here. Apologies, I have no idea what I pressed there. But anyway, just on this idea that everything is going really well for us in terms of our negotiations, and that RB Leipzig have slashed the price of Benjamin Sesko. That's not quite accurate, and that is a misrepresentation, by the way, of what Bild reported. So let's bring up the article. I've translated it into English. I know when you do these translations, you don't always get a kind of a perfect word for word translation, but this is what they said. The current state is that Benjamin Sesko wants to leave RB Leipzig, and the club is also open to a sale sooner rather than later, also to be able to operate on a larger scale themselves in the transfer market. RB are dreaming of a transfer fee between 80 and 100 million euros for the striker, who has a contract until 2029. However, according to Bild, a more realistic price is 70 million euros for the base fee plus bonuses. So let's get this right, okay? RB Leipzig have not slashed the price for Benjamin Sesko, according to Bild. So if you're going around telling everybody that Bild are reporting that RB Leipzig have slashed the price, that is wrong, that is incorrect, that is not what they've said. Bild believe that a more realistic price for Benjamin Sesko in terms of the base fee is around about 70 million euros, plus there'll be probably some bonuses on top. It's about 60 million pounds in English money if you do that conversion. But that's what that report says. It doesn't say categorically that RB Leipzig have gone, actually, we're not making that much progress in terms of these negotiations. I'll tell you what we do, because we really need to sell this guy, and we really need to get on with sorting our own business so that hopefully next season we can get ourselves back in the Champions League. Let's slash the price. That's not what this report says. And I've seen a lot of aggregators and a lot of people on X bringing it up, and I'm not going to call out people because I don't think it's necessary. I think a lot of people got the wrong end of the stick on this. But when you actually go into the Bild website, when you read the report, when you break it down, when you translate it, they do not say that RB Leipzig have gone slash on the price. No, what they are saying is that a more realistic price is around about 70 million euros. Now, will RB Leipzig and Arsenal reach an agreement there? Who knows? It kind of falls in line with some of the reporting we had around about a week ago, where there was a suggestion that Arsenal, I think it was Miguel Delaney that put that out, forgive me if I've got that wrong, but there was a report that said Arsenal were about 10 million euros off. So if Arsenal are at 70, RB Leipzig wants something around 80 and beyond that, then that all makes sense and all adds up, doesn't it? So it's not exactly major breaking news, and it's not exactly accurate either in terms of what people have taken on this and are running with. Look, it feels to me and has felt to me for a while that Benjamin Sesko has still been the priority despite all the chat and all the talks around Victor Gyökeres. Do I deny that Victor Gyökeres would be a good option? No. Would he be the preferred option? In my opinion, possibly. In fact, I'd probably say yes, just about, in terms of my own personal opinion. But I've never really at any point, I've got to be honest, felt as though the pendulum had swung that far towards Victor Gyökeres, despite what the reports are saying. Lots of reports from like A Bola in Portugal or CM Jornal in Portugal, and they're not necessarily the most reliable of outlets, just based on things that we've been involved in as a football club and some of the reporting around them in the past. So, yeah, for me, feels like Sesko's still the priority. As I've said many, many times, pre-season doesn't start until the 6th, 7th of July. Arsenal will probably be using the Victor Gyökeres interest to try and force RB Leipzig, given that the player wants to leave and they obviously need money to go out and do their business. I think Arsenal will probably be trying to use that Gyökeres stuff and maybe utilizing sort of all the stuff his agent's putting out there in order to try and hurry Leipzig along. But I do think that by the start of pre-season, we'll know who the striker's going to be. Now, we might not have dotted every I or crossed every T by that point, but we will know who the striker that we're after is, and hopefully they're in time to join up with the rest of the boys as early as possible, so that going into the season we're in the best possible shape. Because make no mistake about it, we cannot afford to fall behind in the title race, even in the really early stages. I know if we lost a couple of games at the start of the season, there'd be a lot of people that go, don't panic, don't stress. We cannot afford to fall behind teams at the level of Liverpool and at the level that I expect Manchester City to be back at next season. We've got to hit the ground running. And the only way we hit the ground running, in my opinion, is if we get everything sorted, everything decided, and all the major business done by that point. So we're running out of time. We've got to get it done nice and soon if that's going to be the case. But the longer these guys have with pre-season and with their teammates, the better in terms of their settling in and getting up to speed. So that's the actual latest on Benjamin Sesko as per build. It's not a case of them having slashed the price, and we've got to be just wary. I mean, we need to follow up these reports and read them properly, don't we? That doesn't always happen, unfortunately. Things catch fire on social media, and they go and they go and they go and they go, and all of a sudden you've got a completely different story to the one that's being written. But hey, it is what it is. We're going to take a short pause. It's not a particularly long episode today. In fact, it's going to be quite short, probably about 20-25 minutes. I've got somewhere to be this morning, hence why I'm here, hence why I'm not in the home studio / office. So yeah, we'll whiz through the rest of the stories that I want to discuss, and then we'll take a few of your questions before we sign out. But we're going to take a short pause now. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Like and subscribe. Okay, let's bring you the latest on Cristhian Mosquera. According to reports, Arsenal had their first bid for the player rejected and are said to have gone in again with an offer that is about 20 million euros. That's the total value of it. Are Arsenal confident that they can get the deal done at that price? Who knows? We talked about it the other day when it was initially reported that Arsenal had registered this interest and had begun those talks with Valencia. There was a lot of people out there saying that, yep, this is something that Arsenal could wrap up for less than 20 euros. Clearly, that's not been the case. They've had to go back in with slightly more. I'm okay with them going back in with slightly more, but I do think that, you know, you've got to be sensible about this, and there's got to be a limit with regards to how far you'll push. Mosquera will be coming in as a backup player, no question about that, with hopefully the room and the potential and the opportunities to grow, which I think he'll get at Arsenal over time. We could certainly do with another defender, but is it in my top 3 priorities right now? No, it's not. So it's all good. And from what I've seen of the player, which isn't a great deal, he looks promising. There's a lot of good raw attributes there. And he reminds me a little bit of Big Gabby in the sense of, I can see why you would be drawn to him, but I can also see a few flaws. Big Gabby was able to iron those flaws out over time and is now one of the best centre-backs undoubtedly in world football. So that gives me confidence that we know how to mould a centre-half into a top player. So hopefully this all works out. But yeah, that's the latest on it, that Arsenal have had to go back in with that second offer, said to be to the value of around about 20 million euros. We'll keep tabs on that and see what happens. There was a really interesting conversation that took place on Spanish radio last night. I read the transcript of it, where Mosquera's future was being discussed, and apparently Valencia are still trying to convince him to stay. However, Mosquera is worried and frustrated by the fact that Valencia don't seem to be showing any real ambition at the moment. Huge club, getting the Mestalla renovated, that will be a huge resource drain. But they had a pretty uninspiring season in La Liga last season, and that's been the case for Valencia for such a long time. Remember, this is Valencia that dumped us out of the Champions League twice back in the day. Rafa Benitez, John Carew, Pablo Aimar. Remember that iteration of Valencia? Well, they're a million miles away from that right now, and you can understand why a player in Mosquera's position having attracted interest from a number of other European clubs, is considering his future. So we'll have to sit tight on that one, wait and see what's going to happen. We think Norgard and Kepa are going to be announced next week. So those two are all in hand, nothing to worry about there, and Zubimendi as well. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, it's looking good on those fronts. It looks as though those deals are pretty much done, and we're just in the stage of preparing an announcement, final dotting of the I's, crossing of the T's, medicals, etc., etc. Right. One other thing I wanted to talk about. It's not Arsenal related, but this is something that really wound me up when I read it yesterday. So we've got to do this before we take a few of your questions from the live chat. Okay, so the following rules will be introduced to the Premier League next season. Halftime interviews with players and managers. Interviews with players who get substituted off, and dressing room broadcasts. This is the Americanization of the Premier League, and I don't like it. Okay, American sport is one thing, and it's a completely different thing, and it works for that. But I'm lucky enough through this podcast and through other work that I do to interact with a lot of Premier League fans and Arsenal fans specifically from the US. And one of the things they love about our sport is that it is nothing like American sport. So why are we trying to take it in that direction? It's like we're trying to create drama. It's like we're trying to create sensationalism. It's like we're trying to turn everything into a soap opera. Halftime interviews. You've got a 15-minute window. You want to be talking to your players. You want to be giving your players instructions. You want to be making those tactical tweaks that are going to see you get the result that you want. Who the hell wants to speak to the media at halftime? Also, from a fan's perspective, watching it, halftime comes along. I want to go and get myself a drink, pop to the loo, whatever. I don't want to bloody sit there and listen to a manager who doesn't want to be there and doesn't want to give that interview. And they're going to do it with players as well. What? When they're trying to catch their breath, when they're trying to take on instruction from the coaching staff. This next one, though, is even worse. Interviews with players who get subbed off. What do you think you are going to get out of a player that's just been subbed off? Oh, yeah, I played quite well today, I thought, but the gaffer thought I was shit and hooked me off. And now I'm really annoyed that I'm going to go knock on his office door on Monday morning and let him know exactly how I feel. All you are doing by introducing all this nonsense is creating further distance between the media, the players, and the managers. You think that you are doing something that is going to bring everybody closer and that's going to provide more insight and that is going to provide a sort of fly on the wall kind of look into what the game is really like and all about. I promise you it's going to have the complete opposite effect. You're going to get managers that don't want to talk to you but are contractually obliged, so they're going to give you very little. The same with players. Nobody's going to want to get themselves in trouble by saying something they shouldn't, etc., etc. And then you've got the dressing room broadcast. Now, I don't know exactly what that entails. Is it going to be while the players and manager are in the dressing room, or are you going to let the presenters go in the dressing room while the players are out warming up and have a chat about the game? I don't know. I don't know exactly what that looks like. But if ever there was a time to borrow the phrase, the game's gone, this is it. This is awful. And as I say, it is the Americanization and the dramatization of our sport. Hate it, can't stand it. It works in other environments. It works in other sports. For some people and for some sports, that's always been the norm, and that is fine. Football is the most popular sport on the planet, on the globe. And relative to other sports, it's probably had the least rule changes and the least kind of changes in terms of the way we consume it and it's broadcasted, etc., etc. Why are we hell-bent on ruining something that is fantastic? Why are we hell-bent on spoiling it? I promise you, no real football fan is going to enjoy this stuff. It's shocking. Archangel says game was gone 20 years ago, Harry. Keep up. Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. Okay, very, very short pause, and then I'll take 2 or 3 of your questions before signing out. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Goon. Okay, more comments than questions at the moment, just on this stuff. Um, just rolling through them at the moment. Joe mocking the idea of these interviews. He says, "Hey Sky, I did my hammy. I don't want to say no more. I will not give you any tactical insight." It's probably not far off how these things are going to go, to be honest. What else have we got? Sports Genius says, if football is the most popular sport, wouldn't it make more sense to introduce more contact between the players and the managers? No, because in sort of football's popularity, what's happened is that there's become more dangers as a player and as a manager, and you don't want to say things that get you in trouble. Listen, I've been there. I regularly broadcast on matches for radio. And so I'm that guy after the game that is hanging around waiting for a manager or a player to speak to me. Now, the managers are contractually obliged to give us an interview as rights holders. The players aren't, but if the team gets a good result or a player has a particularly good game, sometimes they're quite keen to kind of wheel them out and put them in front of the microphone as well. But I can tell you, from the probably hundreds of interviews that I've done now post-match, I would say 70% of the time, they don't want to be there. They want to be out as quickly as possible. Because, for example, if you're a manager, let's say you're Mikel Arteta, that's the one I have the most experience with. It's not anything to do with Mikel Arteta necessarily. It's just an example. But you come out of an emotional game, you got to go in the dressing room, you're going to speak to your players very, very briefly, because then you got to get back out and do the TV media with whoever it is that was broadcasting the game. Then you've got to go down a whole line of flash interviews and speak to rights holders from all over the world. And you're probably going to spend half an hour or so doing that. Then you're going to go into the radio interviews. And again, you're going to get asked all the same questions. And if you're in a bad mood because your team's lost or whatever, you're not really going to give particularly insightful or helpful answers. Then you're going to go in the press conference and you're going to do it all over again. There's burnout. That's what happens. They end up with burnout. They end up not really interested. They end up rushing through these things. And it's all managers, right? On the rare occasion, you get someone that really wants to make a point and put a message out there, and that makes for a great interview. But generally speaking, they don't want to do it. So by introducing more of this, all you are doing is ticking a box, because you're not going to get any more insight. You're not going to get any more analysis. All you are going to get is players and managers feeling burnt out, trying to avoid saying the wrong thing. In particular, in a player's case, man, if you get substituted and you're sitting on the bench and someone comes over with a camera and a microphone and says, how do you feel about being taken off? What are you going to say? You're going to say it's a disgrace and I'm going to be having words with the manager? No, you're not, because you'll be dropped the following week. You can't win from this as a player. And therefore, you're not bringing more contact about. You're creating a bigger wedge and a bigger distance between them, because you might get superficial interviews. You might get people ticking a box, but you're not going to get that insight, I promise you, or that raw emotion. Fuad has a question about Martin Odegaard. He says, are you worried about the lack of depth behind Odegaard? And there's no links to players of that profile. We can't just have an 18-year-old Nwaneri to rely on if Odegaard gets injured, in my opinion. I think if we get the striker in, I think Kai Havertz will be seen as someone that can play in that role. Not everybody's going to agree with that, and not everybody's going to like that. But I think that's the way that Mikel Arteta and Arsenal will probably view it. And listen, that's why I think that Eberechi Eze would be a really good signing, because not only would he give us the ability to play from that left-hand side. Okay, he's not a traditional winger, but we've got traditional wingers already on that side. So maybe that works quite well in terms of just diversifying our weaponry. But at the same time, you know, you bring Eberechi Eze in and he could play in an 8 position as the creative midfielder. So I think that's why, you know, it makes sense to go out and get the Crystal Palace man. Cello Mama says, do you think Partey has something to do with Berta, as in the Partey departure? He was at Atletico, we took him, and now he's here and Partey's leaving. Long shot, but could there be tension or the past affecting this? Maybe there is. I don't know for sure. I'm speculating, but listen, I've read a few bits about this. I've seen a few videos going around on social media about this, and there was a sort of framing of the relationship between Berta and Partey as one that lacks respect. And maybe that is the case, but, you know, You don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't know the ins and outs of it. Maybe Berta being there didn't help. And maybe had Edu been there, we might have conceded a little bit and allowed Thomas Partey to remain or got closer to his demands, in which case he might have said, okay, come on then, let's do it. I don't know. I'm not sure. But what I will say is I wouldn't rule that out. I wouldn't rule out Andrea Berta and Thomas Partey's previous relationship maybe having an impact on those negotiations. But I mean, again, we've said it before, like, I think we're weaker for losing Thomas Partey. And all of that, you know, I've said it a million times. I'm not going to go over it again and again from a purely footballing perspective. But there are other factors here. And Andrea Berta's responsibility is to cover all bases. And if, you know, we thought the salary wasn't right or the contract length wasn't right, then, you know, you can't really argue a great deal with that when you think about how unreliable Thomas Partey's been fitness-wise. I know he was good last season in that sense, but would you bet on him having another season like that next time around? I wouldn't. So I was unhappy about the departure because I think we're weaker for it. And I don't think having Zubimendi, who needs to adapt, and Cristhian Mosquera coming in necessarily makes us stronger. I stick by that opinion. But I also recognize that this would have been quite a difficult negotiation to do. And so without knowing the details, I'm not going to sit there and go, it's Berta's fault. Equally, I'm not going to absolve him of any responsibility because the truth is, I just don't know. Let's take a couple more before we sign out. Jid says, let's say the fans get what they want and we get a front three of Rodrigo, Gyökeres and Saka. What do they think will happen? I have a feeling that fans have this impractical idea that they will all score between 17 and 25 goals each. When was the last time we saw a world beater team with a marquee front three that did what fans think our world would look like if that was the case? Yeah, look, I think when we had that season, a couple of seasons ago now, 3 seasons ago now, where Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli all got 15 goals apiece, I think that's as good as you can hope for in terms of the spread of goals and in terms of maximizing what you've got in those players. I think to expect more than that is unrealistic. And I think naturally, if you have that striker who you put your chances through, generally speaking, and whom you create for, you're going to take away opportunities for some of the others. Not completely, but, you know, if Gyökeres did come in, let's say, and he got 25, 30 goals, you can bet that the output from your wingers will be lower because he'd be taking a share of the goals. It doesn't mean that if you bring in that 25, 30 goal a season striker, that everybody else is going to maintain that level, because the way you play will change. The focus of your game will change. And as a result of that, you might be taking away goal scoring opportunities from other players. So, yeah, I think that's where I stand on that. I think you're right that people have overinflated expectations on that. Andy says, did you hear about a now lower quoted Leipzig fee? Build is the source, or is it just rumors? That's a nice way to finish the show because that's what we started with. So we kind of gone full circle. I do have to dash. I'll quickly bring you guys up to speed on that and wrap it up. Build did not say that RB Leipzig have slashed the fee on Benjamin Sesko. This is what Build said. They said, Benjamin Sesko wants to leave RB Leipzig and the club is also open to a sale sooner rather than later. They want to be able to operate on a larger scale in the transfer market themselves. RB are dreaming of a transfer fee of 80 to 100 million euros for the striker, who has a contract until 2029. However, according to Build, a more realistic price is 70 million euros for the base fee plus bonuses. So Build did not say that RB Leipzig have gone, done. 70 million is what we'll deal at. Let's get this done. That's not what happened. Okay, that's not what's happened. RB Leipzig still want between 80 and 100 million euros. Build are putting a bit of opinion in this piece and saying, yeah, you know what, 70 million euros feels like a more realistic price. Whether Arsenal and RB Leipzig are going to get closer to that point and closer to an agreement and eventually find an agreement still remains to be seen. But I've seen lots of people online, lots of aggregators spreading the news it's not news. It didn't happen. It hasn't happened. That's not at least what Build are saying. So if you're going to quote them, you got to quote them for what they've actually said. And what they've actually said is that in their view, 70 million euros feels like a more realistic price. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all so much for joining me on this episode of the pod. We've got our Cristhian Mosquera scouting video being recorded today. We've also got a Mosquera one in the bank as well. But given the Mosquera deal is more advanced, we're going to release that one later on. So if you're a patron, keep your eyes peeled for that. You can become a patron by visiting patreon.com/The Chronicles of a Gooner. The link is in the description as well if you find that easier. Come and join us on Patreon and you'll get access to some of our scouting videos, all of our scouting videos, in fact, and more exclusive content. I'll see you all the next time. Until the next one, take care of yourselves and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.